Next section we've got to really look at in the value chain is why will people buy my images? Or, in other words, as it says on here, why will people buy images from you? And this is where I really believe, and I see it a lot, even with some of our experienced photographers, even after a couple of years of training, they still don't change enough to actually really kind of adapt and things really, and that's why I'm a little nag in their ear all the time. However, what the first thing we've got to do is because they love them, in other words, the expression and the posing is exceptional and shows them off at their best. That's got to be it. Look, I've talked for 2 days now on me being an old fat man. I am. I get it. It's okay. I could go on a diet, but I'm a lazy git. I don't exercise enough. I eat all the wrong stuff. I get it. But the last thing I want to look like in a photograph is an old fat man. So that's your job. So when we talk about the animation and the posing and the lighting, that's your job. Make sure you do your job. If you still take the average photograph from 5 feet 2 inches high, and you still use a medium zoom lens, and you're still shooting at f8 in every session that you do, basically, there's no difference. There's no comparison. You might be sprinkling a little bit of magic in Photoshop or whatever it will be, but that might be the only difference. And if you're having to rely on the post-production to make you into a better photographer, I would say you need to retrain your brain and actually start to be a better photographer in studio to really show it off. But the first thing is going to be when we see a shoot from recent soon, we're going to look at the variety and the expression and everything else with it. Yesterday we were reminded, somebody asked us if we sold, what's the expression, Jay? What did they ask for?
What did they ask for?
Oh, shoot sheets. Was it style sheets?
Style sheets. Style sheets. Yeah.
Style sheets. I honestly didn't know what they were on about at the time, even though it was on my screen. We call them shoot sheets. And we went, no, we don't. Why would you want to actually buy a shoot sheet from anybody? And then we both realised, I think at the same time, didn't we? We went, oh, hang on a minute. We've got all the apps. The apps are already online on the Photographer Academy. You just go on there, you use the link, and you download the app, and it's brilliant. That is technically a session sheet for you to actually use as a guide. Anyway, but when we see the images online later, you're going to be able to see the variety, because variety is the key thing, but it's also about how we put everybody together. Why else are they going to buy my images? Because you're enthusiastic, you love what you do, and you show it in all ways. I got a classic example, used it yesterday as well. Was recently I went to one of the Xperience photographer studios, in fact. They did a favor for me at the beginning of the year, and so I scratched them back by giving them a day of me, as it were, and I went up. And I was told that I'm going to be shooting a family and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, oh, okay, oh, great, you know, whatever I'm there to do, I'm just get on with it and things. So the first thing I did was, when I knew that, I needed to change their studio around, because why they wanted me to shoot was they wanted me to shoot in their environment, with their background, with their lighting and everything else. Because they're not quite like here, where we've got state-of-the-art, newest kit from Kaleidoscope and so on. By the way, the new Kaleidoscope ELC range is absolutely cracking. If you're investing later on in the year, their new range going from the 125 to 500 absolutely rocks. Haven't got any here yet, but we had them on trial for a week, and anyway, absolutely recommended. Back to it. So anyway, I went there, and the first thing I realized, I had to change their lighting setup around because it was all wrong. They had low-powered lights trying to light the background, which meant that if I continued shooting in the way that they were, the low-powered lights, which were trying to output the most light, couldn't cope. So I knew that I would be hitting, I'd be missing at least one in every other shot, if not one in every 2 shots, because they were bursting out all this flash. I've got a higher powered flash who's giving me my main lights through the softbox and so on. But in fact, it's these little lights were going to cause me a problem that I'd have to fix, and really, which I didn't want to do. So anyway, once I'd swapped all that around, I was pretty much ready for the client. Bit daring 15 minutes before a mum and dad arrived with 3 kids under the age of 5 to not be ready, but I was ready on time. So anyway, began the shoot. The client arrives. I went through their clothing to begin with. And straight away I went, well, these don't have a proper discussion about what to bring in for their session, because I can see in front of me I haven't got enough. So that is when, as a photographer, you might go, well, they haven't brought the variety of clothing in, I can only do X, Y, and Z, and that's basically it. I can't look in that way because I'm employed for an hour and a half shoot, even though most sessions are done within the hour. And I basically need to shoot a series of images. Everything is different, and I need to make sure that the sales room has 48 different images around that kind of number. So anyway, we went with the usual start and everything else with it. And I've got to be honest, their second child suffered from second child syndrome with it. In other words, oh my God, please go out of my studio as fast as you can. But that's life. If you've been shooting families for as long as I have and photographing kids in the same breath, then basically you know what I'm on about. You've got to get on with it. That's what you've got to do, and so on. So we went through the shoot and everything else with it. And basically, by about 25 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, I think most photographers would have given up. They would have gone, that's it, and we're done, and so on with it. But I actually ran to the hour and 25 minutes, and I was shooting the whole time in different ways. Now, I can't show you that shoot because it's a real client of theirs and things really. But the owner of the studio was recording on their iPad while I was doing the shoot. And basically, once the client we'd finished, the client was packing everything away. I reset the studio back to the normal. And then I turned to, once the client had gone, I turned to them and said, okay, so what did you learn from that? And the key thing was, don't give up. And they said, we would have probably stopped the session without any trouble. And it's like, well, okay, in these times, I've been encouraging our studios to open or spread the studio sessions longer. So in other words, instead of doing 6 sessions a day, they were doing 4 by allowing more space between each client and things. But they said the first thing is that we would have given up pretty much. We would have just gone again. And I said, okay, then, that's fine. But you see why now. They went, yeah, we get it. I said, so where were the best photographs taken? And they said, right at the beginning and right at the end. And I smiled to myself because, in fact, that would mimic what the best sales always used to be when you were a film photographer. The best-selling negative on a roll of 12 was number 1 and number 12. And it was because we put the most energy into the first shot, and we knew we were going to run out of film. We had one more shot to do before we ran out, and we'd have to change film. And in that time of changing a film back or changing a roll of film, whichever you do, we could have lost the child forever, and that was it. So we knew to actually put all that effort into it. And I got to be honest, the last probably 10 minutes, 12 minutes of that shoot will inspire that sales room. Absolutely guarantee that client will not be able to not spend money. I can guarantee it because I knocked it out of the park. And it's not because I'm trying to impress the studio owner and her team. It's because I totally believe this could be the last photograph I ever take of a client. Every time I go into a shoot, some of you know I'm involved with certain children's cancer charities and so on. And some of them it is the last shoot that I ever do, but it must look like it's an amazing shoot. I won't use any excuses not to create. And okay, I've got to listen to when child has basically got 10 minutes worth of energy for me to photograph, and I'm going to use that energy up as much as I can and then going to change it around so I can maximize it. But I've got to nail the photograph. That's my job. So they're going to see that. That client went out from that studio on that day with the 3 kids and the one little horrible one, but she was amazing, by the way, but she just had so much energy and I couldn't apply enough to her, and neither could her mum and dad and things. But that client went out, and at that point, they're almost in tears, I can guarantee you, because they know I've just nailed it. Now they're worrying how they can afford it. That's my job as a photographer, is to make sure they're going away from here. And when we get into the PSPS in a minute, remember what I just said, because that energy coming out of the studio, I'm now going to put into preparing them for the sales room, which is key. In that way, because they're the best pictures they've ever had done, you made the effort. That's everything I just said and more. It's because you're doing more and more, and that's what you've got to remember in every single shoot that you do. Then, because they can afford the prices, you created a pricing structure that is relevant to the type of person you are attracting in. So in other words, if you're doing a certain child promotion, they're probably only in for 20 minutes. They've only had 20-minute experience. So they're probably going to have only X amount to spend on average. And if you accept that and you create a price list based around that, still giving them some future, so in other words, some ambition to spend a lot more money, then at least they can be doing it. But you have to create the structure. If you've not watched any of the business lives, we're going to talk about pricing now in a minute. But the business lives are on the Academy. And if you haven't had a chance to rewatch the recordings that we've been doing for the past couple of years, I definitely go back and rewatch those, because there is all about building a business right from the beginning, going upwards, whether you're niche, last week's was niche, or volume, and so on with it. So again, we've got to make sure that all these fit. So in other words, the value in your business, that's what we said. Because of everything I've just put into them, they now acknowledge that I'm worth my money. That's the key thing. Because when they get to the sales room, they've got to appreciate that. If I wasn't very good at the beginning, if I'm not giving them the experience, they're not going to be prepared to buy it, I can guarantee you. We've got to make sure the price of the product's correct. Let's talk about that now. And then, of course, we've got to look at the image selection, whether it's going to be enough variety or not enough variety. More often than not, you're not giving the clients enough variety. Okay, price and products. How much do I charge? Let's hit this nail on the head, okay, to begin with. Nobody can tell you how much to charge, because they don't know your circumstances. They don't know if you're a guy who rents or girl who rents an office or a shop, or you work from home, or whatever it would be. Okay, there's different parameters that will actually change the pricing structure. But as a rule of thumb, if you're just getting going, no confidence in your photography and sales yet because you don't have any, I would suggest that you're operating a price list that will work on the times two and a half, I should say, to times 3.5. So as a rule, average in first couple of months, 6 months, whatever, you're going to be working probably at times 3 if you've got a little bit of back-end money behind you anyway. What does that mean? Well, it means if I'm buying a product for £100 plus VAT, that will be 120 quid in the UK. And if we times it by 3, that would mean that we're selling that product for £360. It's common sense, yeah? In the same way, if I was a pro photographer with premises, with a bit more arrogance, a little bit more sales experience, a good product, and so on, we could do the times 5 instantly, which, in other words, that same £120 product is now being sold for £500. Then we go beyond that, so it's the photographer who's a little bit more niche, a little bit more experienced, a lot more kind of idea how to work the sales room without the hard sell. You're probably going to be working at either a times 7, a times 9, and beyond, if you're a full niche boutique business, as it were. So that gives you a bit of a guide, okay, of actually how much to charge. As far as the price list is concerned, you really want to be running 2 price lists. One is for your general photography, and one is going to be for probably more promotional kind of photography that you're doing, especially for the weekday stuff perhaps, unless your weekday work is your main workload anyway. Next thing is, what are the best products? I'm going to talk about 2 of my best products that I really love. When anybody joins the Xperience group, we give them £700 worth of new products to go on their wall pretty much straight away, obviously with their images, but from 2 different suppliers. So Loxley Colour is our main supplier, and we also have Kaleidoscope Framing, which is our secondary supplier for custom framing and so on, a lot more exclusive design, exclusive moulding. And they both sell an almost identical frame, which is called, with Loxley's, it's Heritage. So this is the black frame. I'm just pointing this out on the webcam, by the way. So this is the black frame. It's quite classically, simply beautiful, as I say all the time. It can either be behind acrylic, that's standard with Loxley's, so we talk about that being home safe, or it can be glass if you're using Kaleidoscope. Loxley Colour don't use glass, even though acrylic is more expensive. As far as the product is concerned, it can either be edge to edge, it could be with a mount, with a large image, or it could be with a larger mount and a smaller image, in other words. That's really down to the customer, and we talk about that as the wrapping, and we'll talk about that later on in the sales room. So that is the number 1. So with Loxley's, that frame is called Heritage. With Kaleidoscope, it's called Maine, M-A-I-N-E, okay? Then 2 other favorite products that I've got. This is a Kaleidoscope framing product again. This is called the IF08. It's in fact 4 individual photographs, individually framed, even though I've put them on a backing board. we were getting ready to obviously travel to the in-person sales tour. So each one of these is designed to hang around the house independently or as a collection, as we see here. But this comes beautifully boxed in one box, all wrapped up, and it comes great when it's actually delivered to us. And obviously in the handover, it looks exceptional for the client. So that is another one of my best-selling products, which is the IFO8. Both of these products are included, in fact, when people join up to the Xperience group. Another one is the likes of the float frame, which is a little bit more of a creative style of image, which is basically a photograph behind a kind of out of focus glass, or you could go for the more art style of paper, ragged edge, and so on with it. But whatever they are, it's got to be what is right for you. Another one then, it would be the likes of the print box and USB, or an album USB would be the two of the products that I encourage you to actually have on the price list anyway. So, excuse me. So when we start to talk about the price list, of course, we've also got to think about collections. Now, when we do the PSPS in a minute, we're going to talk about the collections last, because that's the most important thing I want them thinking about when they leave. And collections, as a rule, will read very simple, and they're going to give you the best value for money, whether you call it a collection or a package. That's really down to you. So in our heads, or I should say in the client's head, they're going to be buying in one of these reasons. Very few are going to be buying on size. What do I mean by that? Is that I mean very few are going to have an open budget and just going to go, yep, we want that one, we want that one, we want that one, and so on. That's going to go there, and that's going to go there, and so on and so on. So they're very few and far between. The next clients will be buying on price. So in other words, the next bracket of client, they're going to be thinking, yep, that's about the price level that I can afford. That's what I'm going to do. And then you're going to have the biggest section of your clients that are going to be buying on best value for money. That's where our averages are really made up of, is that best value. If we can nail that to begin with, then we're basically on a win-win situation. If we don't give them best value, then it can be very, very hard for actually some to even spend a basic amount of money for us. So when we're looking at the images that we show off to the client, of course, we're really looking at the variety. So I want us to actually look at a session just to see what it's like. It's a bit of a confusion session because it's two sister-in-laws. So their common denominators, they're husbands who are brothers, and they've each got 2 kids. But what we're going to see in that session is how the variety is there. We also need to make sure that I'm keeping to the flow of the session. I need to make sure I've got a shoot sheet in my head or in a cupboard or on my phone or whatever it would be, so I can actually make sure I'm shooting that variety that I need. It doesn't mean after every single group I'm doing go into my phone and looking at an image. No, I don't mean that in that way. But obviously when you're just getting going and you don't know your flow, yes, you've got to use something as a reference card, otherwise you'll never be able to do it. I need to make sure the clients have a change of clothes. That's absolutely key. I want 3 different looks throughout the session. And during each one of those different look changes, I'm also going to have a change of lighting and styling and so on with it. So with that in mind, let's just quickly go to Bridge. I'm just going to change my screen for a minute to show one-to-one. Let me just move that out of the way. Don't know how to select that down a minute. Still giving me problems. Okay, so Jay, are we seeing my screen okay?
Yeah, I'm seeing Bridge, mate, full screen. Yeah.
Bridge, yeah. Okay, so the first things first is when we look at this image, this selection here, we're looking at too many images. There's 111 images, I think they're all in all, plus a slideshow, which will, I think it's already visible on the Photographer Academy page, website, Facebook page, I should say, for you to actually go and have a look, because this doesn't really show it well when we get into the viewing. But the key thing is, if I just narrow them down for a minute, and we start to look at each of these images. And when we just go through them, you can see that pretty much every one is a different image. There's no duplication. Duplication just gives a client the attitude to basically try and choose between images instead of choosing their favorites out of the selection. So when we talk about the sales room in a minute, I've got to make sure that I'm impressing them that they're really not looking at editing or taking out images or going into a decision between choosing this or this or this and so on. But we're knowing that the variety is different, so they're going to choose their best of the best as we go. So we're into the second part of the session now, as you can see, but the whole point, it's having a difference. There's still probably too many here, but because I said it's a bit of a confusing session, that there's about another third to go and things really. Oh, there's not, in fact, let's finish the end. But you can see their kind of variety that we've got within the image selection. So every one of those in the viewing, the client is going to be able to choose the best of the best. So if you find that you're not really showing off your variety, you need to really start to do that now. You need to start to change it. We'll get back to them later on. Any questions so far on that, Jay?